In 1994, Rwanda lost 1 million people in 100 days. Today, its capital looks like Dubai's younger sibling: glass towers, drone deliveries, robot waiters in the airport. The streets are cleaner than Singapore's, and the economy has been growing at 7% a year for 2 decades. This is a country with no oil, no gold, no diamonds, no coastline, landlocked in the middle of Africa with roughly the same land area as Massachusetts. So what's actually happening here? Let me show you something strange. In 2008, Rwanda's entire government budget was about $1 billion. By 2023, it had grown to $4 billion. That sounds normal until you realize something. 40% of that budget still comes from foreign aid. The country is simultaneously one of the fastest-growing economies on Earth and one of the most aid-dependent. That's not a contradiction, that's the model. Here's how most countries got rich historically. You find something in the ground, you sell it, you use that money to build roads, schools, ports. Eventually, you have enough infrastructure that other industries can grow. Oil funded Norway's welfare state. Copper built Chile's middle class. Diamonds gave Botswana the money to become the least corrupt country in Africa. Rwanda doesn't have that option. What it has instead is something more unusual: a government that runs the country like a corporation, a leader who's been in power for over 2 decades, and a very specific reputation it's selling to the rest of the world. The product isn't resources, it's stability. Let's start with Paul Kagame. He's been Rwanda's president since 2000, though he was effectively running things even earlier. Former rebel commander, ended the genocide, stabilized the country when it was a smoking ruin. By any measure, he rebuilt Rwanda from nothing. But here's what makes the economic model work: predictability. Foreign investors don't just want growth, they want to know the person they made a deal with today will still be in power in 10 years. Kagame changed the constitution so he can legally stay in office until 2034. In the last election, he won with 99% of the vote. You can debate what that means for democracy, but for a certain type of investor, it's exactly what they want to hear. No surprise coup, no sudden policy reversal. One phone call gets you to the top. Rwanda has become the easiest place in Africa to do business. You can register a company in 6 hours. The country ranks second in Africa on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, right behind Mauritius, an island tax haven. This isn't an accident, it's the strategy. Here's the uncomfortable part. Rwanda's growth isn't coming from Rwandans starting 10,000 small businesses. It's coming from the top. The government either owns or has significant control over the largest companies in the country through a holding company called Crystal Ventures. Crystal Ventures owns the biggest telecom provider, the largest construction firms, coffee exporters, hotels. A huge chunk of the formal economy runs through entities tied back to the ruling party. On paper, this looks like state capitalism, China with better PR. But it works, at least by the numbers. Extreme poverty has dropped from 77% in 1994 to around 38% today. Life expectancy has doubled. Kigali has streetlights that actually turn on. The question isn't whether Rwanda has improved, it obviously has. The question is what happens when the growth model depends entirely on aid, foreign investment, and one man holding everything together. Let's talk about the money flow. Rwanda gets about $2 billion a year in foreign aid. That's roughly half the government budget. The UK alone has sent over £1 billion in the last decade. The EU and World Bank are also major contributors. Why are they paying? Partly guilt. The West did nothing during the genocide. This is the repair bill. But there's another reason. Rwanda has made itself useful. It sends peacekeepers to conflict zones in Africa. It hosts refugees. It's stable, cooperative, and Anglophone in a region that's often none of those things. Western governments can point to Rwanda and say, look, aid works. Except the math is strange. The country receives far more aid per capita than its neighbors, even though Tanzania and Uganda have larger populations and similar poverty rates. Rwanda gets this money because it's better at the game. It knows how to write the reports donors want to read. It hires the consultants donors trust. It shows up to the conferences. This is a real skill, and Rwanda has monetized it better than almost anyone. Now, here's where it gets more complicated. Foreign aid pays for schools and clinics, yes, but it also frees up government money to spend on other things. Things like a national airline that loses money, a 20,000-seat arena, sponsorship deals with Arsenal Football Club and the NBA. In 2018, Rwanda spent $30 million to put Visit Rwanda on the Arsenal jersey sleeves. The tourism board said it was worth it for global brand recognition. Critics said it was vanity spending, while the country still needed donor money to pay teachers. Both can be true. Rwanda is trying to do something genuinely difficult, leapfrog the traditional development ladder. Instead of building factories and filling them with workers, it's trying to become a service and knowledge economy, a hub for conferences, a tech startup scene, the Singapore of Africa. The problem is that Singapore had a port and a location at the center of global shipping lanes. Rwanda is in the middle of the continent with some of the highest transport costs in the world. Shipping a container from Kigali to Mombasa costs more than shipping it from Shanghai to Los Angeles. Geography is expensive. But Rwanda has one more card to play: immigration policy. While Europe and the US argue about borders, Rwanda has opened its doors selectively. It offers visas on arrival for all Africans. It's easier for a Nigerian entrepreneur to move to Kigali than to Lagos. The country has also signed deals to accept refugees and asylum seekers in exchange for cash. The UK recently agreed to pay Rwanda hundreds of millions of pounds to process migrants who cross the English Channel. The deal has been legally challenged and may never happen, but the fact that it was even proposed shows how Rwanda is positioning itself. It's becoming a country other nations pay to solve their problems. That's not a traditional economic model, but it might be a very modern one. So, is it working? Depends on the time frame. In the short term, yes, growth is real, poverty is falling, infrastructure is improving faster than almost anywhere else on the continent. In the medium term, there are warning signs. The debt is growing. Rwanda's external debt has tripled in the last decade. It's still manageable, but the trajectory is steep. And much of that debt has been spent on big projects, like the national airline that doesn't make money, and a new airport that isn't finished yet. The country is also running a massive trade deficit. It imports far more than it exports. That gap is filled by aid and investment, but if either dries up, the model breaks. And then there's the politics. Kagame is 77 years old. He's been in power for a quarter century. The entire system is built around his ability to manage relationships with donors, investors, and regional powers. There's no obvious succession plan. When he eventually leaves, what happens? Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Rwanda's model only works because donors believe it. The moment the narrative shifts, the money could stop. And narratives are fragile. Right now, Rwanda is seen as the success story, the country that did everything right. But it's also been accused of supporting armed groups in the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo, of suppressing political opposition, of controlling the media. If those stories become the dominant narrative in Western capitals, the aid could vanish fast. And without that aid, the budget collapses. The infrastructure projects stop. The vision of becoming the Singapore of Africa becomes much harder to finance. So what is Rwanda actually selling? It's not coffee or minerals, it's a promise. The promise that development is possible even without natural resources, that good governance and political will can overcome geography, that Africa doesn't have to wait for oil to be discovered or prices to spike. That's an appealing story. Donors want to believe it. Investors want to believe it. Kagame has spent 2 decades making it believable. But the uncomfortable truth is this: Rwanda's miracle runs on OPM, other people's money. $2 billion a year in aid, billions more in investment that flows in because of tax breaks, political stability, and the belief that this is the safe bet in a risky region. None of that is sustainable forever. Here's the thing, though. Maybe sustainability isn't the goal. Maybe the goal is to grow fast enough, long enough, that by the time the aid money slows down, the economy has diversified enough to stand on its own. It's a race against time. Rwanda is trying to build a knowledge economy, a services sector, and a regional hub before the donor money runs out and before the political model becomes a liability. Can it work? Singapore did it. Dubai did it. Both started with almost nothing and built entirely on strategy and positioning. But both also had geography on their side, and neither had to rebuild from genocide. So here's where we are. Rwanda has grown faster than almost any country in Africa. It's done it without oil, without coastline, and without the traditional advantages that powered every other development success story. It's done it with aid, discipline, and a very clear plan. But the plan depends on things Rwanda can't fully control: donor priorities, investor confidence, regional stability, and one leader's ability to hold it all together. The model works until it doesn't. And when you build everything on a foundation of foreign money and political continuity, you're always one scandal, one election cycle, one geopolitical shift away from watching it fall apart. Rwanda isn't getting rich despite having no natural resources. It's getting rich by turning its lack of resources into the resource itself. The question is whether that's genius or just a really good postponement of the inevitable. If you found this video educative and informative, make sure you hit the subscribe button for more. Thank you.